The grand palace of Verelia stood high above the clouds, made of shining crystal towers and glowing bridges. It floated gently in the air, held by the power of ancient machines and light energy. Inside the palace lived Princess Zinari, the most beautiful and intelligent heir in the Verelian Empire. Her silver eyes could see the truth behind lies, and her mind was trained in every science, art, and law of the galaxy. But there was one thing Zinari had never done. She had never said yes. From the Zorthan warriors of the Red Belt to the scholars of planet Mindora, many powerful aliens had traveled across the stars to ask for her hand in union. Their ships were shaped like dragons, moons, and suns. They brought treasures, knowledge, and promises of great alliances, but Zinari refused every single one. Some tried to win her with strength, showing off their battleships and scars. Others wrote her poems using starlight and music only her kind could hear. One even tried to impress her by bending time for 1 minute to show her the future. She said no to them all. Her advisors were worried. The Royal Council reminded her that the future of Verelia depended on a strong marriage. The Empire had enemies growing in the north and trade routes under threat. A good marriage could protect them. But Zinari did not care for politics of fear. "I will not bind my life to someone who sees me only as a tool," she said calmly. "I wait for someone real." The council rolled their eyes. Real? What does that mean in a galaxy of power? Still, she waited. Then, one day, a small gray ship landed quietly in the outer dock. No grand entrance, no music, no parade. Just a simple human shuttle from a small blue planet called Earth. The visitor's name was Milo. He was not a soldier, not a prince, not even a famous thinker. He was just a junior diplomat sent by Earth's new galactic outreach agency. Earth was young in the galactic community, still learning the ways of alien customs. Milo's job was to watch, listen, and report. The council almost laughed. Human. What can he offer? But by the law of Verelian custom, any guest from a recognized planet could speak with the princess. And so the meeting was arranged. When Milo entered the throne room, he didn't bow too low. He didn't bring a gift. He didn't dress in gold or shine. His clothes were simple, a little wrinkled from space travel. He looked around the room with wide eyes, curious but not afraid. Zinari sat tall on her crystal throne, dressed in flowing cloth made from star threads. Her silver eyes studied this new visitor. She expected him to start praising her looks or speaking of Earth's value, but he didn't, single quotes D. Instead, Milo looked at her calmly and asked, "Are you happy here?" The question surprised her. No one had asked her that before. Most only talked about alliances, fame, or her royal duty. She raised one eyebrow. "Why do you ask?" Milo shrugged. "You live in a palace in the sky, surrounded by people who want something from you. I just wondered if it feels lonely." Silence filled the room for a long second. The guards looked confused. The council whispered behind her. But Zinari said nothing. She simply stared at Milo, unsure what to make of him. That night, she didn't sleep. The simple question repeated in her mind like a soft echo. "Are you happy here?" She didn't know why it bothered her. Maybe because it sounded honest. Maybe because, deep inside, she didn't know the answer. The next morning, she sent a message to the human quarters. "Invite the Earthman to the garden. I wish to speak again." The council raised their voices in protest, but Zinari ignored them. For the first time in years, the princess was curious not about someone's ships or power, but about their thoughts. The princess who had said no to every great power was about to meet someone who had no power at all. And something about that felt different. The palace garden of Verelia was not like any other. The trees shimmered with blue leaves, the flowers sang in soft tones, and floating lights danced through the air like fireflies. It was a place of beauty and peace built to impress royal visitors, but Milo didn't look impressed. He walked along the garden path with quiet steps. hands in his pockets, eyes watching the sky instead of the glowing plants. Zinari walked beside him, tall and graceful, her guards following at a distance. She wore a lighter robe today, not the heavy royal one. Her silver eyes were sharp, waiting to understand this strange man from Earth. "You don't seem surprised," she said after a while. Milo looked at her. "It's beautiful, yes, but beauty isn't the same as comfort." She tilted her head. "You are not like the others. They try to flatter me. You do not." Milo smiled a little. "I wasn't sent to impress you. I came to learn." Zinari stopped walking. "And what have you learned about me so far?" He looked thoughtful. "You're tired of being seen as a prize." That answer made her pause. Most would try to guess her favorite food or show off a poem. But Milo's answer went deeper. "You think you know me already?" She asked. Milo shook his head. "Not at all. I'm just listening." They continued walking, and for the first time in a long while, Zinari didn't feel the need to put up her royal mask. She asked him about Earth, and Milo told her stories not about war or power, but small things. About rain on windows. About a street musician who played in the cold, just for joy. About how his little sister once named every ant in the backyard. Zinari listened quietly. These were not the grand tales of other suitors. But they felt more real. "I never met someone who talked about such ordinary things," she said. "Is life on Earth simple?" "Sometimes it is," Milo replied. "But even in simple things, there is wonder." She looked at him closely. "You speak like a poet, but your clothes say traveler. Which one are you?" "Just a person," he answered. "That's all." By now, they had reached the garden's edge where a small fountain glowed with soft blue light. Zinari sat on a smooth stone bench, and after a pause, she nodded for Milo to sit beside her. The guards shifted nervously but said nothing. "Tell me something else about Earth," she said. Milo thought for a moment. "Well, we argue a lot, about everything, even silly things. But we also care. If someone falls, people help. Even if they don't know each other. That's something I've always liked." Zinari's voice was quiet. "Your people must value kindness." "Not always," he admitted. "But when we do, it makes a big difference." She looked up at the stars. "Do you think kindness is enough to lead a planet?" "No," he said. "But it's a good place to start." Zinari smiled for the first time that day. It wasn't a royal smile. It was soft, real. Like someone remembering something they hadn't felt in a long time. Then a bell rang in the distance. It was a signal her next meeting was waiting. More suitors, more politics, more empty words. She stood slowly. "Duty calls." Milo stood too. "Will I see you again?" She gave him a look, unreadable, then said, "Come to the trial grounds tomorrow. I wish to test something." "Me?" he asked. "No," she said with a tiny smirk. "Your truth." Without another word, she walked away, her robe flowing behind her like a wave of silver. Milo stood in the garden for a few minutes more, listening to the flowers hum and watching the strange stars above. He wasn't sure why she wanted to see him again. He had no title, no wealth, no magic, but maybe, just maybe, what he had was something she had never seen before. And tomorrow, she would find out. The next morning, the trial grounds of Varelia were filled with light and sound. Floating platforms circled above the arena, where noble guests, council members, and curious visitors watched from shining stands. The ground below was smooth and wide, ready for the ancient court trials, a tradition where suitors were tested to prove their strength, wisdom, and creativity. But today, it was not a prince or warrior who stepped into the circle. It was Milo. He wore no armor, no cloak, only a simple jacket with Earth's small silver pin on the collar. He looked out of place among the glowing lights and shining walls, but he didn't look afraid. Princess Zinari sat high above in the royal seat. Her expression was calm, but her eyes stayed on Milo. The council members whispered to each other, "This is a waste of time. He's just a human. Why would she test him?" Zinari heard every word, but she said nothing. The trials began. Trial 1. Combat of Grace. The first test was a combat trial, not a battle to hurt, but to move, dodge, and think fast. A mechanical sphere with arms and energy whips circled around Milo. It moved quickly, striking with bright lashes. Many suitors had failed this test by trying to fight back with force. Milo didn't fight at all. He moved carefully, ducking under the swings, stepping to the side, jumping when needed. He wasn't fast, but he was focused. He let the machine wear itself out. In the last minute, it stopped attacking and floated still. He had passed without throwing a single strike. The crowd was silent, then slowly clapped in surprise. Trial 2. Puzzle of Mind. Next, Milo stood before a glowing table of crystal pieces. A pattern was hidden inside, but only those with strong logic and memory could solve it. A clock of light counted down above his head. Milo stared at the puzzle. Then, instead of touching it, he stepped back and watched the crystals. He noticed how light bent around them. Quietly, he walked to the side of the table and looked again. From this angle, the answer became clear. He placed the pieces in a new way using the shape of their shadows. Not just the pieces themselves. The table glowed green. He had passed again. Zinari raised one eyebrow in interest. The crowd leaned forward. Trial 3. Art of Heart. The final trial was the most difficult. It was the trial of heart, where the suitor must create something meaningful in front of all. It could be a song, a painting, a sculpture, or anything that showed the soul. Within. Milo stood in front of the display table. On it were tools from across the galaxy: light brushes, sound blocks, color stones, and more. But Milo picked none of those. He reached into his bag and pulled out a small piece of soft wood. It looked old and plain. Then he took out a pocket knife. The crowd watched in confusion. He sat on the floor and began to carve slowly, carefully, without speaking. It took time. At first, the shape was unclear, then a trunk, then small branches, then tiny leaves. When he stood up again, in his hand was a carving of a tree, not glowing, not floating, just simple. But it looked real, alive. He placed it on the table and stepped back. Silence filled the arena. Zinari walked down from her seat. She stopped in front of the carving. "What is this tree?" she asked softly. "It's from my home," Milo replied. "It grew outside my grandmother's window. I carved it from memory." Zinari stared at the little wooden tree. There was no magic in it, just care, time, thought. Then she looked at the crowd. "Let it be known," she said, her voice calm but clear, "that this human has passed all 3 trials, not by power, not by show, but by being exactly who he is." Some nobles clapped politely. Others looked confused or annoyed, but Zinari didn't care. She turned to Milo. "I want to speak with you again, tomorrow." Milo gave a small smile. "I'll be there." As he walked out of the arena, whispers filled the air. Some called him lucky, others called him clever. But Zinari said nothing more. In her heart, she knew this man was different, and that difference had just changed everything. Word of Milo's success in the court trials spread quickly through the palace and beyond. By evening, every noble house on Varelia had heard of the human who passed the ancient tests with no sword, no power, and no title. Some were amused. Some were confused. But many were angry. In a dark hall far from the royal garden, 4 noble lords met in secret. Their robes were made of fine silk, and their voices were low but sharp like knives. "This is dangerous," said Lord Rin. "The princess grows close to him." "She forgets her duty," said Lady Vetra. "She forgets we are surrounded by enemies. A union with Earth brings no strength. A planet with no army, no trade routes, no starships," added Lord Harrell. only stories and dreams. The fourth Lord Tyro was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke. If she won't choose a suitor from our houses, he said, then we must remove the reason. They all knew what he meant. Meanwhile, Milo sat in his guest room near the palace garden. The room was large, but plain compared to the others. He didn't care about gold or luxury. He sat at the window, looking at the twin moons of Varelia. There was a soft knock. He opened the door to find Zinari standing there. She wore a simple robe, not her royal dress. For the first time, she looked less like a princess and more like a person. I hope I'm not disturbing you, she said. Not at all, Milo answered. Please come in. She stepped inside, looking around with curiosity. You keep this space very human. I try, Milo smiled. It reminds me of home. They talked for a while about stars, about music, about old Earth stories. Zinari shared her thoughts too. About her childhood, about the pressure of her position, about the weight of always being watched. You know, she said quietly, no one has ever asked me what I want. Not really. Milo looked at her. Then maybe it's time someone did. There was a long pause. The room was peaceful, but far outside, someone watched from the shadows. That night, as the palace lights dimmed and the halls grew quiet, a dark figure moved silently through the garden paths. It carried a thin silver blade, designed not to be seen by light or sensed by machines. The guards were few. No one expected danger on a peaceful night. The figure reached the guest quarters. Inside, Milo was writing notes on a small digital pad. He didn't hear the door open, but something made him turn, maybe instinct, maybe chance. The figure leapt forward, blade raised. Milo moved just in time. The blade missed his chest by inches. He fell backward, grabbing the first thing he could, a heavy glass orb from the table, and threw it. It hit the figure's arm, knocking the weapon aside. The assassin rushed again. Fast and quiet, Milo reached for his coat on the chair and pressed the hidden button on the collar. A bright shield flashed around him, thin but strong. The blade struck it and bounced off. Footsteps came fast. Guards, alerted by the noise. The figure turned and ran, vanishing into the dark hallway. Milo stood still, breathing hard, the glow of the shield fading. By morning, the news had spread. Someone had tried to harm the Earth envoy. The council called for answers. The nobles expressed shock. But Zinari knew the truth. She met Milo in the garden once more. This time, no guard stood nearby. You were nearly killed, she said. Her voice low. But I wasn't, Milo replied. This wasn't a mistake, she said. It was a warning, Milo nodded. I figured. Zinari looked at him. You could leave, you know, go back to Earth, stay safe. Do you want me to leave? He asked. She shook her head slowly. Then I'll stay, he said simply. For a moment, the world seemed quiet. The garden sang its soft music, and the leaves shimmered gently. Zinari reached out and took his hand. Thank you, she whispered. Not as a princess, but as someone who, for the first time, wasn't standing alone. Days passed, but the tension in the palace did not fade. Guards were doubled. Council meetings grew longer. The nobles watched Milo with narrowed eyes, and the whispers behind his back grew louder. Some said he used tricks in the trials. Others said the princess had lost her mind. But Zinari didn't care. Each evening, she met Milo in the gardens or walked beside him through the learning halls. They spoke of the stars, of peace, of memories from Earth and Varelia. Slowly, the quiet bond between them grew stronger, but not everyone was silent. One afternoon, Zinari's closest maid, Luma, entered her chamber with a troubled face. Princess, she said softly, I overheard something strange in the eastern wing. Two nobles were speaking in secret. They mentioned ... a signal. Zinari looked up sharply. A signal? Yes, Luma said. They said it was sent to the Dark Rim, where the enemy fleets hide. Zinari stood at once. Who sent it? They didn't say, Luma replied, but they mentioned a name, Lord Tyro. The name hit like a cold wind. Lord Tyro was powerful, respected, feared. But Zinari had always felt something false in his kindness. She turned to Luma. Say nothing to the council. I need proof. That evening, as stars rose high in the sky, Zinari and Melo met in the garden once again. But her face was not calm. There's something you should know, she said. She told him everything about the nobles, the secret signal, and her fear that someone from inside the palace was working with the outer enemies. Milo listened carefully. You think they're planning to overthrow you? Not directly, she said. But if they create enough fear, they could push the council to remove me or force me to marry one of their own. And if that happens, Melo said slowly, Varelia becomes theirs. Zinari nodded. Exactly. Milo thought for a moment. Then he said, let me help. Zinari frowned. How? Earth may not be powerful, he said, but we know how to listen. He opened his small data tablet, connected it to the Varelian net, and began to scan for secret signals. He was no spy, but humans had clever tools, and he had learned a few tricks during his training. Hours passed. Zinari stayed by his side. Then a result. There, Milo said, pointing. A hidden message sent 3 days ago from the palace communication tower. Its direction, Dark Rim Sector 9. Zinari's eyes narrowed. That's where the enemy fleet was last seen. And the sender's code, Milo added, matches Lord Tyro's household frequency. That was the proof she needed. The next day, Zinari entered the High Council Hall with fire in her voice. The nobles rose as she walked in, her silver robe shining like moonlight. Lord Tyro, she said, facing him directly, you are accused of sending messages to the enemy. Gasps filled the room. Tyro stood, calm and proud. You have no proof. He said, I do, she replied. This data was found by Earth's envoy. It shows your code, your location, and the time of sending. Tyro's face tightened. Milo stepped forward, holding the tablet. I've shared the information with your security chief. It can be checked by any tech mind here. Tyro looked around the room. He saw that many were no longer on his side. He tried one last time. You trust this outsider over your own people? Zinari stood taller. Yes, because this outsider showed me truth when others gave me lies. The guards stepped forward and placed their hands on Tyro's shoulders. You will be judged by the law, Zinari said firmly. And Varelia will not fall from the inside. Later, as the sun set beyond the palace towers, Zinari and Milo sat once more in the garden. You saved me, she said. No, Milo said. You saved yourself. I just helped you see what was already there. Zinari smiled. I once believed strength came from power. But maybe it comes from honesty, from heart. Milo looked at her. Sometimes the smallest voice carries the biggest truth. Their hands brushed again, gentle, unsure, but warm. Galaxy outside remained wide and full of danger. But in this small moment, under twin moons and soft stars, something beautiful had begun to grow. A quiet peace returned to Varelia after Lord Tyro was arrested. The palace guards were stronger now. The council acted with more care. And Princess Zinari's place as future queen felt safe again. But peace in the palace didn't mean peace. In space. Far beyond the silver skies of Varelia, dark ships gathered like storm clouds. They belonged to the Dravari, a powerful alien empire that had once tried to conquer Varelia years ago. Tyro's secret message had reached them, and now they were coming. The alert came at dawn. Red lights flashed across the sky domes. A fleet of Dravari warships had crossed into Varelian space. Princess Z. Nari was called to the command tower at once. She stood before a large star map, where moving red dots showed the enemy ships approaching fast. The air inside the room felt tight. How many ships? She asked the chief officer. 23, he replied. Fully armed, and they're not answering any messages. One of the council members turned to her. Princess, this is an act of war. Zinari nodded. Prepare the shields, evacuate the outer stations, and call the people to shelter. What about Earth's envoy? Someone asked. Zinari paused. Bring him to me. Milo arrived at the command tower not long after. He looked at the map and frowned. They're fast, he said. And from the shape of their ships. They're ready to fight. Zinari looked at him. They think we're weak after what happened with Tyro. They're testing us. Do we have enough defense? Milo asked. Some, she said. But they outnumber us. Milo stepped closer to the map. Then we'll need to be smarter. He pointed to a small moon near Varelia. That moon has a deep magnetic field, right? Yes, Zinari said slowly. Then we use it, Milo said. Hide part of your fleet there. When the enemy passes, your ships can strike from behind. Zinari blinked. You want to surprise them? They expect power, he said. Not strategy. That's how we win. The princess stared at him for a long moment. Then she nodded. Prepare the plan, she said to her officers. Follow Milo's lead. The next hours were filled with movement. Warships launched into the sky. Families were moved to safety. The air felt heavy across the city. Zinari stood in the palace garden one last time, breathing in the quiet wind. She felt a hand on her shoulder. It was Milo. You don't have to fight, he said gently. But I must, she replied. True leader stands with her people. Milo nodded. Then I'll stand with you. She looked at him with wide eyes. You would go into battle? He smiled. I didn't come across the stars just to run away now. The battle began at sunrise. The sky above Varelia turned dark with enemy ships. Red fire lit up the clouds. The shield dome shook with each blast. But the Varelian fleet was ready. Hidden near the magnetic moon, Zinari's ships launched a surprise strike. Enemy warships turned in confusion as Varelian forces came from behind. Explosions lit the blackness of space. Inside one of the command ships, Zinari stood in her pilot chair, guiding the fleet. On a smaller ship beside hers, Milo watched the battle from a lookout post. Reporting enemy movements through his communicator. 2 ships. Moving north, he said. Looks like they're trying to flank us. Copy that, Zinari replied, redirecting fighters. Their teamwork was clear. Her command, his eyes as the enemy began to lose ground. The leader of the Dravari sent a message. We did not expect such resistance, he said coldly. Zinari answered, calm and proud. You expected weakness. You forgot we fight not just with weapons, but with heart. The enemy ships pulled back, broken and scattered. The battle was over. Varelia had won. That evening, after the sky returned to peace, the people of Varelia filled the streets with quiet joy. Lights were hung across the towers. Music echoed softly. In the breeze. In the garden, Zinari stood beside Milo once more. You gave us more than help, she said. You gave us hope. Milo smiled. And you gave me something I never thought I'd find out here. What's that? She asked. A reason to stay. She looked at him, eyes soft. Then she reached out and gently took his hand. This time, neither of them pulled away. Peace had returned to Varelia, and the skies were clear once again. After the great battle, the people celebrated with music, lights, and flowers. The streets were filled with laughter and dance. From the youngest children to the oldest elders, everyone felt proud. Varelia had not only survived, but had stood strong, united. And at the center of it all stood Princess Zinari and the human who had changed everything, Milo, though many still didn't understand why she trusted him. The people could not forget what they had seen. Milo had helped stop an attack, uncovered a traitor, and guided their princess with wisdom instead of pride. Slowly, hearts began to change. For the first time, whispers of doubt turned into words of respect. He may not be one of us, some said, but he cares like one of us. In the royal palace, the council met for the final time that season. Zinari stood before them in her silver robe, calm and graceful. "The danger is past," said the head counselor, "and the time to choose a life partner is near again." "Yes," Zinari replied. They looked at her, waiting. Some expected her to return to tradition. Others hoped she would surprise them. She took a breath. "I will choose not for power or duty, but for trust and for peace." She turned, and Milo stepped forward beside her. There was silence, then quiet murmurs. Then a single clap from the elder of the council, followed by another dot and another, until the room echoed with applause, not loud, but real. Milo bowed slightly. He said no proud words, no speech. He simply stood beside her, as he always had, with respect. Later that evening, Milo walked through the garden, now covered in soft blue lights. The trees shimmered like stars, and soft music played from glowing stones. He found Zinari near the old fountain where they had first spoken. "I never thought I'd stay here this long," he said with a smile. Zinari smiled back. "And I never thought I'd choose someone not born of this world." Milo looked at her. "Are you sure this is what you want?" She stepped closer. "Yes, not because of the trials, not because of what others say, but because when I stand beside you, I feel ... like myself. And I feel like I finally belong," Milo replied. They stood together in silence, watching the sky. Then Zinari lifted a small silver ring, a symbol of promise among her people. "Will you walk this path with me?" she asked. Milo nodded slowly. "I will, always." She placed the ring gently on his hand. It glowed for a moment, matching her own dot at that very moment. The twin moons rose high in the sky, their light shining down as if blessing them. The next day, the message spread across the stars. "Princess Zinari has chosen. Virelia stands." With Earth, leaders from many planets sent kind words. Some sent gifts. A few raised questions, but none dared challenge the decision. After seeing what Virelia had overcome, Milo began his training as a peace ambassador. He studied Virelian law, language, and culture, not because he had to, but because he wanted to serve the people with care. He didn't try to become something he was not. He stayed honest, curious, and kind. And the people loved him for it. Years later, stories were told to children all across Virelia. They spoke of a princess who rejected power-hungry nobles and found wisdom in a stranger's heart. They spoke of a human who walked without title, but with courage. They told how love, trust, and kindness had saved their world, not just swords or ships. And when people looked to the stars, they remembered, sometimes the one who belongs is not the loudest or the strongest, but the one who listens, stands with you, and stays in the same quiet garden. Zinari and Milo now walked hand in hand. The flowers bloomed gently, and the sky above was endless. "We still have so much to do," Milo said. "Yes," Zinari replied, "but we'll do it together." And together, under the twin moons of Virelia, the princess and the human began their new chapter. Not just as rulers, but as a story that would live forever. The end.